NHL 2018-19 regular season standing predictions from 16 to 9. If you haven't seen my other video yet, chronicling number 31 to 17, I highly suggest you go see that first. In any case, let's get to it. Number 16, the Minnesota Wild. Now, a lot of analysts are picking them not to make the playoffs this season, and for good reason. Suter broke his ankle last season. He should be back and healthy this season, but Zach Parise is such a question mark in terms of his health all the time, with his constant back injuries. And I mean, besides, it's well known that Boudreau has got a reputation for doing well during the regular season and just not getting far in the playoffs. But mind you, this isn't about the playoffs. This is just about finishing in the regular season. So they're the biggest gamble for me, but I'll tell you why. Because I know Stahl's not going to score as many goals. He scored 42 goals last season. I think he'll still be good for at least 30, maybe even 35. Joel Eriksson is really expected to have a breakout season this year. He was the third line center last year, but you could see Koivu's minutes come back and his go up. So we'll see how that goes. Koivu himself was picked as a Selke candidate the past couple seasons. Then there's Jordan Greenway, a Calder candidate who is just a monster of a man. I believe he's like 6'6", almost 230 pounds. He's a winger. Analysts are projecting him to have almost a 60-point season. So, although there wasn't any major pickups in the offseason, or any losses really, besides either Tyler Ennis and Daniel Winnick, those I can think off those are all depth players. Eric Fehr was picked up as a fourth-line center. He's a great right-handed face-off man, which will probably help them on the penalty kill and with the fourth line. He was playing in San Jose the previous year and in Toronto. But, I mean, if Minnesota falls out, I think any of these four teams really can switch places right now. So I'm definitely taking a gamble on the Wild, but they also, obviously the GM was fired, Fletcher was fired in the offseason. The owner was very clear in saying this isn't a rebuild, that he just wants to he needs Fenton, who came in as an assistant GM from Nashville Predators, to come in and maybe do a little tweaking and, in order for them to go far in the playoffs. So I think they'll get in. In any case, that's my 2 cents. Number 15. The Dallas Stars. Now, this is probably one of the teams I know the least about. Guilty. And yes, it is a bit of a risk having them in the 15 spot, but so is anyone in this area, really. Dallas' issue has been with depth. They're going to have their new the third coach in the last 3 years with Jim Montgomery. Who should be very interesting to see where he takes things. He was a hockey journeyman playing in the NHL and the KHL, amongst others, and so he's seen it all. And with the addition of younger players like Heiskanen, obviously, who's supposed to really shore up that defense, and players AHL playoff standout Rupe Hintz. More things are expected of Matthias Janmark as well this year. I think the depth issues might become less of an issue moving into this season, hopefully. And not only that, but Dallas went out and didn't pick up much in the offseason, but they did pick up Hudobin, the former backup of the Boston Bruins last year. If you remember, had a really good year. I believe him and Rask contended for the best goaltending duo. There was a period there where Rask was out with a concussion and Hudobin went on a 6-game win streak. So I think that's going to be a big difference because last year, right around in their last, last 15 games of the season or so, Dallas had an 8-game losing or 10-game losing streak. And that was because Ben Bishop was out with a concussion, and Lettinen was in net, and he was a sieve. So maybe with a more sturdy backup, just in case Bishop happens to fall. I mean, also Jamie Benn, I think, had 1/3 of his goals in the last 10 games of the season. So they were there. They were there, and I think this year, depending on this coach, because he's a big question mark, obviously, I think they can do it with this team now. I don't see them going much higher than this, obviously, but I think they'll be in there. Number 14, the Philadelphia Flyers. James Van Riemsdyk on the power play is and as a net presence is just really going to help Philly in so many ways. I mean, he had 36 goals with Toronto, a career year in goals, with I think his least amount of ice time he's ever had. So this is a great signing for Philly. They already have a pretty deep team. Obviously, everyone knows Claude Giroux and Couturier, and they're expecting a rebound year out of how do you pronounce his name? Konecny. We'll move on. Who else am I missing? Nolan Patrick. In his sophomore season, they expect more out of him as a second line center, and they probably will get it. And then of course, and then there's Wayne Simmons, who's looking at a rebound year as well. I mean, Philly just has so many depth weapons right now, and then that's not even talking about their defense. With Ian Provorov, who looks really good, who looks solid. Sanheim, who's coming up from the AHL. Hag, and of course, you're gonna kill me for this pronunciation, but Gostisfire. Gostisfire? The Ghost. We'll call him the Ghost. So, I mean, and they might even get a goaltender. A goaltender. Philly's getting this guy must be falling. Carter Hart will probably be ready about halfway through the season. He's already won two goaltendings. Oh my God, can't English. He was goaltender, the best goaltender in WHL for 2 years in a row. Finally, and he won gold for Canada in the World Junior Championships. So, the Flyers could finally have their first good goaltender since Ron Hextall, who's now managing the team, obviously for a number of years. So, although the combo of Elliott and Nervers weren't horrible last season, I wouldn't necessarily call them good either. But they still made the playoffs, so I think they're going to make some bigger noise this time around. Number 13, the Calgary Flames. Now, they were in a playoff spot up until they had a few key injuries to their goaltender, Mike Smith, to their star center forward, in Sean Monahan, and their star rookie, Tkachuk. So that's a lot of minutes to be replaced in some key positions. Your main goaltender, your main center, and your star rookie winger agitator. I think that really hurt them. But, I mean, they picked up some really key players in the offseason here. As a UFA, they picked up James Neal, who has the potential for up to 30 goals. Coming, of course, from Las Vegas last season. And then there was that big trade in which they got back Lindholm and Hanifin. And they also picked up Derek Ryan, who's also from Carolina, as a depth center. So there's a lot of shoring up that they did in the offseason there. And hopefully with some healthier seasons from those previously mentioned three key players, I can see Calgary maybe even winning a round or two in the playoffs. And don't forget their new coach, who's coming in this year as well, Bill Peters. Now, Bill Peters has had just about a .500 record with the Carolina Hurricanes in the past, 4 years? And they've never made the playoffs. So, he didn't have much in the sense of goaltending with the Hurricanes either. So, there's also that. His teams are known for having the best possession stats in the league. They're also known to be his teams to have better shot metrics, shot suppression. So that could be the tipping point for Calgary. So I'm pretty optimistic about them. Number 12, the Florida Panthers. Now, they had three off-season acquisitions here. I believe Hoffman was an off-season acquisition, but it was Mike Hoffman, who they got from the San Jose Sharks, who originally came through the Ottawa Senators, who's good for 20 to 30 goals a season. So he adds a lot of scoring to that top six, which is also already really good. Because you've got Barkov and Trocheck down the center, who you can put up against any other team in the league, really, especially in their tough division with Toronto, with Matthews and Tavares, Boston, Krejci, and Bergeron, and, of course, Tampa with Braden Point and Stamkos. Then, of course, you have some real capable wingers in Huberdeau and Danilov and Bustad. So this top six is really solidified. Now the dark horse here is a rookie they had who played a couple of games last season, who came across from the NCAA named Henrik Borgstrom. He was scoring at about a 1.30 clip in the NCAA last season. So if he could step into that third, maybe even fourth, but if he can step in that third and add some supplemental goal scoring to that group, look out. Hoffman's already there. You add a potentially goal scorer in Borgstrom. You've got a deep team. If Luongo can stay healthy, then you have the defense, which is one of the best in the league with Ekblad and Matheson and Piask and who am I missing? And Yandel. Oddly enough, three of those guys are top three in the league when it comes to giveaways. What? Yeah, I know. So, that when it comes to the last half of the season or even the playoffs, that's an area that they've got to correct. However, they do have some help coming in on the blue line in 28-year-old veteran KHLer Bogdan Kisilovic. He should really help shore up that third pairing there and maybe elite a little bit more minutes. Give some of that top four a little bit of a rest. But overall, Coach Bugner has got a lot of tools at his disposal, and they not only should they make the playoffs, but they should at least do really well in the standings. Number 11, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, they ranked 14th last year, and I have them up on number 11. Now, bear with me now. Panarin is as good as gone coming the 2019-2020 season. He seems determined to test the UFA market. Bobrovsky also says he will not sign during the regular season, so he's probably a goner as well, unless they really show him the money after the season's done. Let's just say those players stay, and they don't trade them before the deadline to recover a bunch of assets, because in that case, if that happens, you're not even going to see them probably make the 14th spot they did last season. Let's say they keep them, and they're doing well. It's going to be for a number of reasons. Now, to start off, second-line center Wenberg and winger Jenner are going to have bounce-back seasons. And Wenberg, at the end of the last year, did look good playing alongside Vanek, who's now in Detroit. So let's hope that he carries on with that momentum. That's one. The next is a lot of youngsters will be stepping up, starting off with their first-line center, who was a rookie last season, Pierre-Luc Dubois. He had about 20 goals. He had like 40 points overall. He looks like the real deal for him. He's a big man. He could definitely take a step up this season. And then there's other youngsters, Sonny Milano, Oliver Bjorkstrand, and who am I forgetting here? Josh Anderson. So you could see more of a deeper lineup, scoring lineup coming this season right now, the 18-19 season. And then there's Riley Nash, who they added, who was a third-line center with Boston, who was moving up and down the lineup during the year because of injuries to the lineup. At one point, he was playing on the first line beside Pasternak and Marchand. So he's sort of a Swiss Army knife. He's got a lot of experience in the playoffs as well. He could add a lot of veteran savvy to this team. So I think all those things put together, including and who can forget their defense with Rosinski and Seth Jones, who could very well take a hard run at the Norris Trophy this year. And then they have Murray and Savard as well, so they have a pretty solid defense back line. Moving on, number 10, the St. Louis Blues. Now, I have them this high because of all the offseason acquisitions and trades that they did, UFA signings, starting with Ryan O'Reilly, who's one of the best two-way centers in the league. Great, he's a great face-off man. He could be on the first line or the second line center. Then they got Bozak as a UFA from the Toronto Maple Leafs, who's going to slide in perfectly into that third line center spot, who's good for 40 to 50 points. Plus a season. You've got Patrick Maroon, who came from the New Jersey Devils, who's a great power winger who can slide up and down the lineup. And then there's David Perron, who they signed as a UFA from the Las Vegas Knights, who put up like 60 points last season as well. So for the players who moved out and the players who moved in, you're looking at I think it's like, I saw a list of somewhere, it was about like a 50-point difference. Just in those players alone, 50, 60-point difference. So St. Louis has just got unbelievable depth in their top two lines, and even their third line is looking really good. And then you have a couple of dark horse rookies who might be stepping in this coming season, as in Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas, both who are centers in the OHL. Now, Jordan Kyrou is also a winger, and he racked up almost 2 points a game last season in the OHL. And Robert Thomas, not too shabby, 1.5. So either those two could step into the bottom six. And yeah, St. Louis is looking scary. Their defense. You have Norris Trophy candidate Peter Angelo to start with. You have Colton Parayunko, who's probably going to take another step forward this season. He's amazing. There's Edmondson, who's really good. And then, of course, you have Bouwmeester, who might actually be stepping into the third line pairing. And Vince Dunn, who's the pass-happy playmaker, might be moving up into that middle spot for the Blues. So their defense, which is they're known as a shot suppression team. So if you have an opportunity as a visiting team, you have to take advantage of it. Now the only question mark, of course, at least the biggest one here, is Jake Allen. Jake Allen has been, not only is he up and down every year, but he's up and down every month. Who's it going to be, today? Last year, Jake Allen had, he didn't have such a great year last year, and Carter Hutton, their backup, bailed him out. He played about 30-ish games. He's now in Buffalo because St. Louis just couldn't afford to pay him, and like I said, he had the best save percentage and goals against in the league. So now Chad Johnson steps in, a former Buffalo backup and Calgary Flame, and so on and so forth, who didn't have a great season himself last year, but Buffalo's team defense was like a sieve. So I'll kind of excuse Chad Johnson from that, and overall, he's a decent backup. But if he falters, if Jake Allen falters, then these more question marks start to arise. And then, of course, there's the infirmary questions regarding Fabry. After being out of the league for like a year with knee problems, is he going to be able to stay healthy? And then, of course, Jaden Schwartz, who seems to be a bit injury-prone as well. Because once he got hurt, I believe their offense just went into the hole. So I know there's some ifs here, but I think they're going to be deadly. Number 9, the Boston Bruins. Now, they were 4th overall last year. I have them here at number 9. I just think the teams above them just added much more. Because Bruins didn't really add much. They added John Moore on defense, but, Boston's already got an overabundance, an embarrassment of riches on D. And they lost their third line center in Ryan to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he was like a Swiss Army knife. He was a great depth centerman who moved up and down the lineup. When Bergeron was hurt, he stepped into the number one line. Now, we all know Boston's got the best first line in hockey with Pastrnak, Marchand, and Bergeron, for sure. But after that, when it comes to their forward depth, I don't really see it. I mean, they have 5 rookies who started last season, and if any of those guys take a step back, 1 or 2, especially if they're especially if they're either Jake DeBrusk or Charlie McAvoy, who plays so high in the lineup, that could be an issue for Boston. You know, then there's David Bax. You know, can he stay healthy this season? Which Krejci is going to show up this season as well. He seems to be slowly waning in his career now. So those are all questions on the forward depth chart, and I mean, one could say, hey, you know, why not? There are rumors about maybe Boston trades one of their overabundance of defensemen for, you know, maybe Torrey Krug, for example, for like Artyom Panarin, the bread man from Columbus, and take a serious run at the Cup to give them that forward depth and the scoring, the depth scoring that they sorely need. And they did add Halak from formerly of the New York Islanders as a backup because they lost, I believe it's Hudobin, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and Rask, he had a good year last year. Not so much in the playoffs, maybe. But he needs to return to form. And if Halak comes as advertised, you know, that's the good end of it. But yeah, if anything happens to their top line, like injuries to Bergeron or Marchand, or too many of their rookies from last season slip, take a step back in their sophomore year, or players like Bax, you know, again, you know, gets hurt, I could see them sliding as far as 16th, maybe even fighting for a wild card spot to the playoffs. That's it for this part of the countdown. The last part, if it's not up already, it will be out very soon, I promise. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions and see your list so far as well. Hit like if you like this video. Smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you have any Hockey Geek friends, please don't feel shy about sharing. I'll see you soon.